Let's break down now where we are in terms of the larger picture in the presidential election. Let's bring in our virtual roundtable. Joining us now, LZ Granderson, ABC News contributor, Tara Setmayer, former GOP communications director and senior advisor at the Lincoln Project, and Leah Wright Riguer, professor of public policy at Harvard. Thank you all for being here. Leah, I'd like to start things off with you. We don't know who the next president is going to be yet, but we are still getting a read right now, at least, of who came out to vote. And that picture is not necessarily as expected. When you look at the demographics, young voters, for example, there was a lot of expectations that they would be very energized this time around, that they would come out in droves. And we're seeing basically they came out in the same numbers they usually do, which is really not very much. What were your big takeaways when you look at the demographics of who came out to vote in this election?
So I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind. The first thing to consider is that we don't have all the ballots, we don't have all the information, and we're not going to have all of the information for some time. I believe Pennsylvania said, all the ballots won't be counted until Friday at the earliest. With that said, there are a couple of adjustments that we can make and a couple of projections that we can make, including something like young people coming out pretty flat or coming out in the same numbers that they have in previous years. I think one of the things that this highlights is how frustrated Americans were across the country, particularly with their choices in this election. And that's not necessarily something that's particular to this election, but is something that has been a red flag for the last couple of election cycles that we've by and large ignored. The other part to consider is the impact of COVID-19 and the impact of this kind of these various protocols, essentially. We can't dismiss the fact that this election took place in the midst of a global pandemic, the likes of which we haven't seen in 80 some odd years. So that also matters as well. And then there's also interesting trends coming out of places like Georgia, interesting places like Philadelphia, Florida. All of that matters, and we'll be able to get a better picture as we move into the next couple of days.
LZ, if I could bring you into this on the question of maybe the real loser in this election, pollsters, right? And they had a lot of them had, the mainstream ones, including ours, had a very different result. What happened in your judgment? Well, what do you see in this election? Not to focus on the polling industry, but on the American people. What happened? Aside from a remarkable turnout, what does it tell you about us?
I still believe that there's a Bradley effect when it comes to President Trump because he's such a polarizing figure. You can ask someone 1,000 times who they're voting for, and they can assess whether or not it's safe for them to be honest. But once you're in front of, a polling location, you can make your decision the way that you see fit in the comfort of privacy. And I think that, for a lot of Democrats and for a lot of pollsters, they have to recognize that just because you don't like a candidate doesn't mean that other people don't like that candidate. I think that's a big indication. And then two, not to throw shade at the industry, but exit polls don't necessarily tell you the same thing that the polls before Election Day will tell you. And we've got to be better, or they've got to be better anyway, in terms of ascertaining accurate information based upon the questions ahead of time so that the expectations of the electorate aren't shifted based upon antiquated methods or inaccurate information.
Tara, what does that tell you about the conversation around politics in this country? If people are afraid to even admit what candidate they intend to vote for, how are we supposed to find middle ground to move forward in politics, particularly when you see factions of both parties pulling closer to the extremes?
Yeah, I think that given how close this election is and, how remarkably incompetent and the failed leadership of Donald Trump, particularly on COVID and the litany of other things that have been problematic during his tenure here as president, from the misogyny to the racism to the populism, the conspiracy theories, all of these things that so many Americans would cast that aside and still support him. It's incredible. So I think that this, even if Joe Biden wins, which it looks like he will, he has a Herculean effort to try to unite this country. There are considerable polar opposites and divides in where we are. And I think that there really needs to be a cultural reckoning with the American people about what they're willing to accept. Donald Trump's behavior, particularly around the integrity of the election, and his comments last night about this being fraud and stopping the vote count, and that's not democracy. That's not what we do here in America. And I think the American people really need to reassess what they're willing to accept.
And Tara, how do you foster that conversation? I mean, you're a Republican who does not support the president. There are many others in that camp as well, but the results still are what they are, and this is not a landslide. Even if he doesn't win this election, which he very well might, this is close. So this conversation is going to have to happen. And how do you foster it if people are afraid to even open their mouths and say that they like the guy or they support his policies?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. This is, I was hoping that Trumpism would be repudiated in his loss, that it wouldn't be this close for this exact reason, so that we could start to have these conversations once the threat of Trumpism was repudiated. But given that it's alive and well and that the Republican Party seems to be fully engulfed in it, I think this is a very difficult conversation moving forward, because the party in its current form cannot remain this way. It's unsustainable. Demographic changes in this country won't allow it. And frankly, what they're allowing is very antithetical to not only traditional republicanism, but also just to the way our constitutional republic was designed. So I'm not quite sure how we have that conversation, because it's really a character issue here. And I'm not quite sure where we start to bridge that gap. But hopefully Joe Biden can do that if he pulls this out.
And Leah, let me ask you, Leah, Wright, Riguer, we've been talking about the rising demographic in America that for years we've said would carry the Democratic Party to victory, and that really hasn't come to pass. A little bit, maybe Arizona suggests that this year, but really, if you look at what the exit polls are saying, and like we're all a little bit doubtful about the polls, Donald Trump outperformed himself in all of the demographics, white women, black men, black women, Latinos, except for white men. Joe Biden did better with white men. What's happening to that rising demographic? It seems to be diversifying its political interests.
So a couple of things. One, we know that exit polling is all over the place right now. So AP VoterCast, for example, has very different outcomes than the New York Times and, other exit polling institutions. So I would really caution us to think about, what these actually means and not read too much into what we're seeing in the moment. We should have better data in the coming days. With that being said, one of the things that we know is that demographics isn't destiny, and that the Republican Party at this moment has essentially figured out a way in which to siphon off votes from these various kind of groups, these different demographic groups, in such a way that it comes together with this overwhelming white vote to produce, enough to win elections in significant states. But at the same time, I want to, again, caution us, because what we're seeing right now, particularly as more votes come in, is that in areas like Georgia, right, in areas like Michigan, that it's African Americans, that it's Latinos, despite what you may be seeing in, say, Florida, that it's African American, it's Latinos, it's Asian voters that are proving to be the difference in these swing states in ways that are really important. So it's reinforcing Democratic coalitions, even though they may be fragile coalitions.
And LZ, your home state of Arizona is one of several still up for grabs that could still decide this thing. What are you watching closely for the next few hours?
Well, there are a few things. I do live in Maricopa County, which is the epicenter right now in terms of how Arizona is going to play out. I would say first, the media and certainly Democrats need to get rid of this notion of Trumpism. Yes, Donald Trump is the mouthpiece right now, but the things that he is saying and what he's banking on in terms of getting reelected are topics and issues that have been around for decades and decades. This isn't a one-off. He's not an outlier. He's just taking advantage of the gap that has always been there. So this notion of Trumpism, I think, really does a discredit in terms of really explaining this dynamic that we're witnessing. And when it comes to Arizona, I think the thing that's fascinating is that there are three elements to this election that I don't believe are being talked about enough. Number one is the endorsement of Cindy McCain, the widow of the great, obviously, John McCain. She decided to come out and speak against Donald Trump in Arizona. She endorsed Joe Biden, and I think if that didn't lead to more votes towards Vice President Biden, it certainly suppressed some Democratic votes, some Republican votes who are very strong military out here in Arizona. Number two, Mark Kelly. Obviously, we know about Gabby Gifford and the tragedy there. Still very popular figures in Arizona. That helped Joe Biden. And number three, which you may find somewhat humorous, but marijuana was on the ballot this year in Arizona, and it received more votes than Joe Biden. It received more votes than Kelly. So there are issues out here that Arizonans treat as truly independent. And, you know, I could hear you laughing, Terry, but I promise you that had that vote been held maybe during the midterm election, not a general election, you may see a different result out here in terms of who's for president. So I do believe the issue of marijuana, making it legal in Arizona, certainly helped Joe Biden, who has been very open in saying that he would support lifting that from the federal list in terms of banned substances. That helped him a great deal. Those three things, in combination to obviously the policy discussion and the racism of Trump, et cetera, certainly helped Joe Biden capture Arizona here. But I'm not quite willing to say that it's a blue state just now. I just think that it was perfect timing because of the marijuana bill.
All right, I was laughing with you there, LZ. but Tara, let me...
Well, put it this way. As someone who also lives in Los Angeles, I'm quite happy to hear that that passed. And I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, there we go. So, TMI. Tara, let me ask you. So now we face, let's assume for a moment that as things are going, they will remain. In other words, that Joe Biden, who looks like he has a better chance at this point, before all the votes are counted, let's just assume for a moment that we have a President Biden. We have a divided government again, and a divided country. What can get done for the American people in that Washington with Joe Biden in the White House instead of Donald Trump? What do you think?
Well, given that Joe Biden has long-standing relationships with many of the senators who are still there, I'm hoping that he'll be able to massage those relationships and get back to governing. This will be up to Mitch McConnell. He's been an obstructionist, unfortunately, up until this point, but you know, Republicans, I don't think, want to go through what they went through with Donald Trump at the helm, and they would like to actually see some things get done. Healthcare needs to get done. Infrastructure, you know, we'll see what they can do. But, you know, I'm not holding my breath. When you have divided government like this, it makes it very difficult to get a domestic policy agenda through. And a lot of democratic institutions and norms need to be restored. And hopefully Joe Biden will be able to do that, from the Department of Justice to the DOD to the CDC. And the number one thing is getting COVID under control and having a plan to help heal this nation and get the economy back on track. So that should be priority number one.
And Leah, I know we keep hitting on demographics, but I just want to ask you one more, because one big one that stuck out in that realm was the way President Trump performed in Florida. He seemed to do really well, particularly with Latinos in South Florida, with a lot of the messaging being around socialism. And he won that state pretty early on. But what does that say in terms of the Democratic Party, where you're hearing more of the party reflecting that message? Does that mean they're vulnerable in the future with this community if they don't somehow change their messaging?
So I think there have been a lot of people within the Democratic Party or who are Democratic Party adjacent who have been sounding the alarm about Latino voters for more than a year, for 2-3 years, actually, who have been saying, this is on the horizon, this is coming, in part because there's not really an understanding of Latino voters, whether it be breakdown because of national origin, whether it be, their Catholicism and religion, whether it be, their feelings and their ideas on socialism. But the other thing that I think one of the things that the Democratic Party has missed, particularly in Florida, is the way in which disinformation and misinformation has penetrated Latino enclaves, and including Spanish language media. So we saw, for example, in Spanish language newspapers in Miami, that they ran 8 months of disinformation and QAnon advertisements and things like that about Joe Biden. It was missed for months, right? So we see these kinds of things. The other thing that the Democratic Party is going to really have to figure out is how are Latinos different depending on what region of the country that they're in. So we happen to know, and also class divides. So we happen to know that Latinos who are working class in specific parts of Texas tend to vote very, very liberally, very progressively. Latinos in other parts of Texas, particularly in wealthy enclaves, tend to vote conservatively. So the Democratic Party has a lot of work to do in really figuring out the demographics of Latino voters. But the signs have been there for a long, long time. People just haven't been paying attention.
All right, Leah, Riguer, Setmayer, and LZ Granderson, thanks very much for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.